Welcome to Varn Blog, and today, children, we begin with a story from Uncle Jean Baudrillard. This story is called The Evil Genie of the Social. Neither the morality nor the positive value system of a society makes for progress, but whether it's immorality and vice. It is never the good nor the virtuous, whatever be the ideal and platonic one in morality, or the pragmatic and objective one in science and technology, that controls the changes or the vitality of a society. The catalytic impulse comes from debauchery, whether of images, ideas, or signs. The rational system of morality, value, science, reason, command only the linear evolution of societies through their visible history, but the deeper energy that pushes even these things forward comes from elsewhere, from prestige, from challenge, from all the seductive or antagonistic impulses, including suicidal ones, which have nothing to do with an asocial morality or a morality of history or progress. Competition is stronger than any morality, and competition is immoral. Fashion is more powerful than any aesthetic, and fashion is immoral. Glory, our ancestors would have said, is more powerful than merit, and glory is immoral. The debauchery of signs in every domain is much more powerful than reality, and the debauchery of signs is immoral. Gambling, whose rules are immemorable, is more powerful than work, and gambling is immoral. Seduction in all its forms is more powerful than love or interest, and seduction is immoral. This is not, nor was it with Mandeville either, a cynical philosophical view, but an objective view of societies, and possibly of all systems of thought. The energy is cynical and immoral. No thinker who follows the logic of his concept has ever seen further than the end of his nose. You must be cynical or perish. And this, if we may say so, is not immoral. It is cynicism of a secret order of things. It is not that individuals or groups would obey some secret instinct, but the fact remains that powers would have attempted to expurgate them, this disobedience, this debauch, this evil genie, by annihilating everything right up to the irrational motivations in the mind of man, has always condemned people to a more or less slow death. The energy of vice is irreplaceable, precisely because it is the energy of fission and rupture, for which they have been naively wanted to substitute a mechanical energy of production. How are we supposedly rational and programmed societies function? What makes them work? What makes whole populations run? Scientific progress, objective information, the increase of collective happiness, the understanding of facts and causes, the proper punishment for the guilty, the quality of life? Not at all. None of this interests anyone, except in a reply to a public opinion polls. What really fascinates everyone is the debauchery of signs. That reality, everywhere and always, is debauched by signs. This is the interesting game. This is what happens in the media, in fashion, in publicity, and more generally in the spectacle of politics, technology, science, and in the spectacle of anything at all. Because the perversion of reality, the spectacular distortion of facts and reputations, the triumph of simulation is as fascinating as catastrophe. And it is one, in effect. It is an ambiguous subversion of all effects of meaning. For this effect of simulation or of seduction, as you please, we are ready to pay any price, more for than the real quality of our lives. This is the secret of advertising, of fashion, of gambling, of all the lewd systems that break apart moral engines and liberate immoral energies, those that feed gaily on the signs of things alone, in defiance of their truth. And in this, they all go back to the magical and archaic energies which have always gambled on the impotence of thought, omnipotence of thought, not impotence, is a big difference, of thought against the powers of the real world, the moral energy that shatters meanings, that traverses facts, representations, traditional values, that electrifies societies blocked and their platonic images. A good example of this diabolical power of change, this immoral energy of transformation for and against all value systems, is the United States. In spite of its morality, puritanism, obsession with virtue, and pragmatic idealism, everything there changes irresistibly according to an impulse that is not at all one of progress, by definition linear. No truer martyr of abjectation of the free enterprise, still both social and wild even today, refractory to even coherent social projects. Everything there is examined, paid for, promoted, and fails according to that standard. West Coast music, therapy, sexual perversions, the skyscrapers of the East, leaders, gadgets, artistic movements, all parade by in successive raids in the same ceaseless rhythm, and our own cultural unconscious, deeply nourished on cultural meaning, can howl and dismay at the sign of the spectacle. The fact that it is there, and the immoral promiscuity of all forms, all races, and the violent spectacle of change which lies the success of society, and the signs of vitality. Fatal Strategies, pages 99 to 101. Jean Baudrillard, translated by Philippe Bechman and W.G.J. Neslewski. Second edition by Semiotext Press. Baudrillard is not the seemingly most materialist of thinkers, and after ranting about not using theory concretely, this is an interesting thing to point to the concrete use of theory as it uses the language of morality, of aesthetics and ethics to undo that. For after all, most of the internet and our social connection schemes were not funded by Elon Musk or the wiles of capitalism, but by DARPA. Technology used by the government to maintain its sense of force and spread out in oligarchic manner to people who could use it in ways to turn it into a klug, dysfunctional and not working. Even Google has become overwhelmed by ads and tries to engage with you so much what it thinks you want that it can't give you what it wants. As I constantly struggle with my Apple phone, whose predictive corrections make my sentences even more garbled than they already are through dyslexia and aphasia, I realize that most of the technology to improve our lives perversely actually has ruined it. But what made it better was sheer competition. Now, this is not me going on to proclaim an asocial gospel. I haven't totally swallowed Baudrillard's black pill, but it is to get you to think about what brings people together and what tears them apart. See, ironically, in most of our political understandings in this hyper political time, there is no politics. Everything is political, and we turn everything to a culture war point, but nothing fundamentally changes. Even people complaining about the deep state and about corruption do very little about it. And when someone does something about it, like recently Josh Hawley pushing the Pelosi Act to fight against insider trading in Congress, it is purely political trolling that might lead to something that is pro-social. This is a very negative view to take, but it is one that is systemically backed up. So how do you use this to build what you want? How do you use this tendency to create self-discipline? the question needs to be asked. If we live in a culture of narcissism, like Christopher Lasch says, and we want these virtues, we have to deal with the fact that, for the most part, the very things that incentivize those virtues in the past no longer incentivizes them. The system that made unions a counterbalance to the power of corporations has turned unions to look a lot more like corporations. It's still better to have one than not, trust me. But you have to ask yourself, how we ever got there in the first place? What are the perverse incentives? And sometimes the perversity of people themselves actually check against the perverse incentives. The oppositional, defiant fool calls out the emperor's no clothes and then looks around and sees no one's wearing clothes. This is why the conservative seems to pay no price for their vice signaling. For all their talk of virtue, it is the vices and opposing the vices of a liberal elite that holds them together. They have no unifying virtues anymore. Only a frustration with an element of a status quo and a inverted utopianism of nostalgia can hold them together. This is also why their scandals do not hurt them as much as they hurt the pious liberal or the sanctimonious leftist. But then porn and war have driven most of the actual useful technological innovations. And even the most egalitarian society is egalitarian because every member of the society will punch someone for hoarding. I love people. Truly, I'm not a misanthrope. But I also love them as they are. This bit of prose poetry is to get you to thinking about what we need to change, what we need to incentivize, and what perversities do we have to accept to build a more truly egalitarian society. Because, ironically, I actually think competitiveness is what will keep us equal. Good day. Like and subscribe if you want more. I have a Patreon where I do more for money. Like most social rentiers, we become ideological hoe bags. Good day.